Earlier this year, I went to the UK Games Expo to try and find some new miniature gaming companies that I had never seen before, and SYTHOPIAN Wars was my pick for the sci-fi category in that selection. Welcome back to Lizard of Doom. I am Max, and SYTHOPIAN Wars is a miniature game with only a few models in its selection at the moment, but that is going to change very soon. Now, this is not a sponsored video, it is a video I thought I'd produce to help the friendly crew from SYTHOPIAN Wars that I met at the Gaming Expo. They were lovely people, and I thought I'd try and get this in front of a few more eyes. I'm not going to give too much of the lore away. If you want to read that, they have a whole website to do that on, which will be linked down below, along with a bunch of other stuff for you to check out after this video. But what I will say is if you like the kind of hopelessness and constant threat of the 40k universe, you're gonna like this. The faction that I chose while I was at the expo were the Confederation. They are an AI-driven evil force that's taken over part of humanity and now uses them as helpless minions in their battles. And the only other faction that's out currently is the Asylumists, a bunch of raving lunatics and machines from blood-soaked cities. Very Necromunda feeling, but also a little bit weirder. There are currently only these two factions available, with 3 units available for each faction, but a new one is coming out right now. These horrific creatures have no in-lore records. They are a mystery, but they look like a mix between mutant Tyranids and your mum's yeast infection. They are a good choice for anyone who's into like Nids or Nurgle, that kind of aesthetic. I'm about to get into some painting for the faction that I chose, the Confederation, but first they have a Kickstarter that is live now. Again, this isn't a paid promoted video. I'm not getting anything for this. I just thought I'd put it out there because some support for them would be great. They seem like lovely people and it seems like a really good game. So they have a Kickstarter that's out now. They have extra models coming out for the 2 existing factions, and they're launching the whole new host faction in that Kickstarter. So check that out after this video. The link's down below. It would be really great if this is how you're finding this and you want to get into it. This Kickstarter is a really good option, and it's live for about another week after I put this video out. Also subscribe. My goal at the moment is 18,000 subscribers to give away. This Mechanicus Gundam that I kit bashed in a previous video to help us get there, and someone in the comments on that video will get this. Let's get into some painting. So this is the guy that I bought at the convention. I bought a unit of these to help support SYTHOPIAN Wars on the day I was there, and I've primed him in Death Guard green. This little helmet, there's a guy in there and he's marched into war by the AI. These two are files I bought on their website. They're £4 per unit. You can see the little face motif carrying over from that guy to this model. Yeah, they're nicely detailed, but they're not over detailed. Something I'm quite glad of after being a Warhammer player for a long time. And that little happy smile goes a long way. See, this one's primed in Death Guard green, and I was going to use that with this Retributor armor spray, leaving the green underneath. Doing a Zenithal with a metallic is a bit odd, but I'm experimenting here and I'm hoping it pays off in a big way. Now, to do another step on that, this would be to use the Griffin Gold dry brush paint. Now, this paint is very old. I've had this for a very long time, and I was hoping that it hadn't gone out of date and just kind of formed one gelatinous blob as the dry paints do, but no, it was still usable. Mainly it did have a little bit of that texture to it, so I just added a tiny amount of water while I was using it, and it fixed it. This paint was still perfect after probably a decade on the shelf, and it worked perfectly, and I got the amount I needed before I moved on to the model. Most of the metallics were going to be gold on this, or kind of like a light brassy colour after this dry brushing. That was going to just be for speed of painting all the little finicky bits, which there isn't much of on these models. And after that was done, it doesn't really look much different. I gave it a really thorough dry brushing, but you can see it when you compare it to a model that it has not been done on yet. And we're on to the armour panels in camouflage green. I'm going for like a swampy kind of colour army. I thought if AI were using weapons against, flesh creatures, they would probably use some kind of chemical or like nerve agent weapons. So I thought this horrific, gross green Death Guard-y colours would be great for them. This is what the other miniatures look like with their green armour painted. It's very nice next to the gold. There's a reason Death Guard does this in Warhammer. I think the dark green always looks nice next to a gold or a copper, so bear that in mind in your paint jobs. Next, I was blocking in the material section on this guy's jumpsuit, because like I said, there is a human in here. I just blocked that in with black, and then I'd also use the same black, this is Vallejo black, on the tyre section of this guy, who's got a little wheel up under there that he gets around on. So with that done, it is on to the metallics. Dark Silver by Pro Acryl would be my choice for a little bit of work here and there. Most of the metallics would stay gold, but anything that looked kind of functional and like it was part of a machine would turn silver in this manner, because it would be like an iron part of the machinery that these troops are using. Here's a little tip as well. Move the model, not your paintbrush. You can see I've got the model at a weird ass angle. You can hold the model at whatever angle you want, but always make sure your paintbrush is at the angle that you are most comfortable with. Next, I would highlight my armor with brownish green from AK and golden olive from Vallejo. This would be an heavy metal style edge highlight along all of the panels. And then I would go back in with the lighter green just to do little bits that were facing upwards. After this step was completely done, off camera, I then went in with the original green armor color to tidy these up and neaten them up just to make them look nice and crisp. That's what heavy metal do. Everyone thinks they're amazingly talented, and they are, but they don't get it in one take. It is time and persistence and fixing your mistakes. It's important to go back and correct the things you've done wrong. Now the highlights for the black areas, Dark Sea Blue and Anthracite Grey from AK. These are new paints I've picked up recently, and they are fantastic. First, you use the Dark Sea Blue and go over all the black areas in quite a strong layer, leaving the black in just the recesses. And then after that, use the Anthracite Grey to go over and layer some highlights on the upper edges of all these areas. However, this would end up looking a little bit blocky on the model. You can see that on these smaller areas, a heavy layer looks fine, like these folds here at the top and at the bottom of his knee there. But on the large, chunkier areas like his thigh, doing a heavy layer leaves kind of a big stepping colour between them. So that little stroke across there looks wrong. What I would do here is go back with the Anthracite Grey and glaze the transition. I would do this a couple of times just to make that a smoother transition. And because I'm using such thin watered down paint, it dries really quickly. It's a really quick step to do. Don't skip it when you're painting material. Always think about glazing between the transitions to make it look more like smooth material with the light shining down from wherever you've placed your light source on the miniature. I would even go back in with a wet brush here and take off some of the paint just so I was happy with the lower areas before it had dried. Once that was done, I had a lovely dark bluey black uniform on the guy underneath, kind of a prisoner jumpsuit. Now onto the other metals. Silver by Pro Acryl would be the highlight for the iron areas, just picking up the surfaces that were pointing upwards and edge highlighting some of the more sharper edges on the miniature, like the back of the gun here. These steps are done, all across the other miniatures too, not just on this little guy. I'm just picking on this guy to show you because I'm going to do a cool effect on that screen on his face in a moment. I would first paint it white with Vallejo white to lay down a couple of thin layers to make sure I had a consistent coat of white before moving on to the next step. That would be some fluo Gauss green from Army Painter airbrush range. That would be sprayed on over the top of this white, making the screen look bright with the green splashing the areas around it to make it look like it was glowing this bright green. After this, I would use a transfer from the Palanite Enforcers kit for Necromunda, but cut the top of the eagles off to leave this kind of skull eagle lower half face thing and use it as a base to freehand from. I am by no means a freehand expert, so this was an easy start to the design I wanted to do. See, the official art for these has some big kind of hologram faces, but these are toxic neurochemical agent versions of these miniatures in my own style, so it's going to be a massive skull instead. I thought that would be more than fitting, so stippling white over and around this transfer, I then expanded it out into this really wonky looking skull, but then worked back with some of that fluo green, and then back to the white, then back to the green, and back and forth until I had something I was roughly happy with. This glowing green skull peering at you from the screen of this condemned prisoner marching to war for the big bad evil AI. This was going to be a nice toxic hint to the theme of my army, and something I was relatively happy with for, 10 minutes work. Not bad. After that, I did the glow effect on all of the others as well. The other two got a nice little glowing light, and then it was streaking grime time. Dirty toxic boys need to be in a swamp. That would be the kind of ideal setting for these miniatures, I decided. So I streaking grimed all over the miniature. I used pure streaking grime, but while I was doing it, I also added a little bit of thinner to it while it was on the model, just to help it spread out a little bit and make it not so dark and clogging so you couldn't see the colour underneath. Once I had it at a state I kind of liked, I still was a bit iffy with where it had gone a bit thick on areas, so I put a little bit more thinner on just to bring that back a little bit more and let it dry for a couple of hours before I would go in with a cotton bud with some thinner on that cotton bud just to pull it back off the higher edges and make everything nice and visible again. Then just some basing and I was done. Let's have a little look at some reveals. These models have been quite a joy to paint. They aren't overcrowded with detail and unnecessary pockets and 24 grenades on each chest plate. They are quite simple but effective sci-fi models. They suit this grimdark style, the same as 40k, very, very well. So if you were transitioning over from painting 40k miniatures to this, all of the techniques you're going to be using for your 40k miniatures are going to be relevant for these miniatures too. So all in all, top marks for a very, very small miniature creator. This is a brilliant set of minis, and you would be a fool not to get your hands on the STLs if you have a 3D printer. They are so cheap on the website, and you can literally play this game for free with the rules free. And also they do cardboard cutouts on the website that you can print yourself and try and play the game with them just to get an idea of the rules. So thank you to my Patreons who you saw over those reveal shots. The link to help support me and this channel is up there now. Shablam, I really appreciate it. It really shows me that this content is worth making and people do enjoy it. The rules for this game are totally free. They are on their website. They are a living rule set, which means that they will be evolving and changing and updated as they need to be. Me and my friend read through, had a good look through it. It seems like a decent game. It seems like a smaller 40k. It's not a skirmish game because you've still got units, but it seems like a smaller and cheaper game to get into. We read through the rules, we spotted something, we thought like, that doesn't seem quite on, that gun seems a bit off. So we popped in their Discord, brought it up, and they changed it the next day. Perfect. Now they have two websites which can get a bit confusing. There's the lore one with all their rules on there, and there is also the shop website, so you can buy the miniatures on there. One links to the other, but there's two separate websites. I'll link both of them down below. Also a reminder just to check out their Kickstarter. Have a look at that down below as well. Thank you all for watching. Remember to leave a like for the like throne and a comment for the algorithm god. Remember, it is not a pile of shame. It is a pile of future fun. See you next time, kids. Peace.